Howdy, howdy, howdy. It is Saturday, April 18th, 8 p.m., going live with Managing Money During Crisis, number 18. You guessed it. Thank you so much for watching the recording here. Today, our topic is, will long-term thinking get me out of this? This being a crisis. We're recording this in April of 2020, and the crisis right now goes by the name of COVID-19. But if you're watching this in the future, there could be another crisis that you're going through. And I know what we're going to talk about today will help you through that crisis, because this is a key principle that helped me through crisis when I went through a crisis in one of my businesses several years ago. This idea of long-term thinking. And it was actually a gentleman by that, maybe it was like 10, 15 years older than me, but was the owner of a third generation business. And he taught me this idea of thinking long term. And I want to share a little bit of that story with you today, as well as answer some of the other description or questions that I put into the description of this video. Before we get to that, I want to share the quote of the day with you. I found this quote, I thought it was really good during a crisis. It says, "Never mistake knowledge for wisdom. One helps you make a living, and the other helps you make a life." Now, you probably know everything you need to know at this point about how to run your business, how to do a good job, the nuts and bolts, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you started your business from scratch, you are an expert at what you do. But wisdom is a little bit of a different story. And actually, in these videos that they say, that people put out there, they always tell people what to do, but don't tell them how. And I'm guilty all the time of telling people how to do something, because I think that's really where the knowledge comes in. It's about how do you take where the wisdom comes in. Sorry. It's how do you take the knowledge and apply it? How do you take the knowledge, ask certain questions of it so that you can find the wisdom for your particular situation? And that's really what I want to try to do today. I'm going to break the rules, quote unquote, and go in a little more detail into how as well, even though I know that's like bad marketing or whatever, but I think it's really important to think about the how side of things. And of course, I'll just give you an example, but you're going to have to take that example and ask, how does this apply to me? So rather than saying, I know this already, I already think long-term, or I already know that thinking long-term is stupid, ask yourself, instead of I know this already, ask, how could this apply to me? And test it on, see if some good things result. That's really what I think wisdom is about, is hearing something, saying, how could this apply to me? Try on how it might apply to you in some way that's easy, right? Not too hard, doesn't have long-term impact, right? Or might not. And then see how it feels. And if it feels good, then guess what? You just learned something. You just tried something new. And so that's what I want you to go into this thinking about. So this long-term thinking, how do we get out of this? So I've got to take you back to the winter of 2013 and 2014 in Chicago, and we had the infamous polar vortex roll in, and we had negative 20-degree temperatures that lasted for 3 months. It was the worst winter I've ever experienced. Thankfully, I lived 4 blocks away from my business, and we would still go into work. We'd open the doors, we'd make fresh hot coffee, but there weren't a lot of people coming in. People had kind of self-quarantined themselves because it was just way too cold outside. And so no one was going out, everyone was staying in. Only the essential workers were going out and going to work. We found out then who was really essential in the city of Chicago. But as you can imagine, that was a really rough time for our business. Thankfully, we actually, just to tell you the story, not to try to put a feather in our cap or anything, but thankfully in December, we actually had the TV show Chicago PD use our location as a place that the police officers in the show stopped to grab some coffee and some croissants before, as part of their shift. And they actually had to um, kind of close things down for us. But they bought a lot of coffee from us. And that really helped us get through the month of December, even though it was minus 20 degrees out. And just as a little side note to this story, we were filming Chicago PD, and there's all these actors and actresses around, and they were all inside because outside it was minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But they were bundled up, because it was really cold outside. So one of the actresses actually ended up getting overheated, and the paramedics had to come. So the real Chicago fire people, the paramedics came to the fake Chicago PD filming that day. I'll never forget it. But we met some of the cool people that are in that show. We still watch it to this day. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about thinking long term. So we got through December, and then January was brutal. And we were trying to figure out December was hard. January, we don't have any big thing going on. What are we going to do? And we reached out to someone we knew who we thought was really smart about business, because he was the owner of a third generation business. And so he was coming by our place of business, and we said, can you just stop and can we have a conversation? And so he was like, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. And so we sat down, we had some coffee, and we were talking, and he told us one of the things that was really, really crucial for the rest, for the last 6 years. This has been something we come back to over and over again. He told us that as a company look back over the past 3 generations, that there's always hard times, and that it never really gets easier. That's kind of just what business is like. And of course, 3-generation business, they had gone through a lot of the cycles, the ups and downs, the really rough winters, the changes in their industry. And they were in an industry that was in construction and did things in that sector. So you can imagine there was booms and busts and all kinds of things throughout those 3 generations. And he was just like, look, guys, business is hard. You got to figure it out. Look at that tough grandma type love that he shared with us that day. And maybe not in so many words, but we got it. And so we went back to the drawing board after he left, and we said, okay, how can we, we're not closing. We're going to get through this. We had that almost stubbornness about us. Okay, it was totally stubbornness about us. Brandon and I are both really stubborn, that we were like, no, we are not closing. We got to figure this out. If we want our business to last 3 generations, we got to figure this out. If we can't get through this, how are we going to face whatever else comes our way? And so we did. We figured it out. And what I want to share with you today is that this thinking long-term, right? Saying, yes, we want a business that lasts for 100 years. That's what showed us the path forward. That's what even opened our eyes to think through, how can we just get through these next 2 months, right? If we didn't have that long-term thinking, we probably would have just given up and been like, too hard, we're done. This is the thing that killed our business. And now, yesterday, I talked about have an exit plan. If this is the time to close your business, don't have any qualms about it. But if you feel like you want your business to go forward, and you want to be around for a longer time, then yes, let's talk about it. So that was, I think I answered kind of the first question in the description. Yeah, how can thinking long-term help or harm? Grandma's all about thinking long-term, but is that good for business during a crisis? I think absolutely 100% it is, because it was for me. But you try that on, see if it's true for you. Now, how might thinking long-term help or harm what you do with your cash, with your sales, and with your expenses right now? So there is the danger of thinking so long-term that you miss what's in front of you, right? You are thinking about, I got to hold on to this money because I might have X, Y, or Z happen in 6 months or a year from now or whatever, rather than, there's an opportunity for me to grow my business right now. I should spend this money, right? This cash that I got. Or I'm so focused on making the sale in a year or 20 years that I missed the sale in front of me, and don't ask for that person to buy. Or I'm so much thinking about this big expense that I don't miss the small expenses today, or what have you. So you want to find this way to think long term, but ask yourself, okay, if that's where I want to be long term, what does that mean for what I need to do today? What does that mean for what I need to do right now in my business? Not, well, I think this could happen. I want to be prepared if that happens, not just thinking that way, but say, okay, that we don't know what the future holds. We don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we definitely don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now. Maybe I'm going to think about what I want to happen, but I'm going to act today with what I know is going to happen today and what I can make happen today to keep my business going through this crisis. So this next question that I put in there is going to probably seems like way out, like, oh, how did this question get into the description? What about all those projects you've been saying you'll get around to doing eventually? Might that project list come in handy right now? And here's where I want to talk about how if you're thinking your business is going to be around 100 years from now, you can actually find the inspiration and the way to get your business through this crisis, possibly through that project list of things that you've been putting off and saying you'll get around to one day. You might have a list of 5 things or 500 things, I don't know. But if you look at that list, I'd recommend taking that list, maybe putting it onto a computer or onto little index cards or, something where you can shuffle things around, prioritize. These are the things I think will grow my business the most long term. These are the things I think will help my business the most during this crisis, and go, like top to bottom, what's most important. Maybe some of the things are on both of those lists. And they rank really high on those lists, so they could become like, oh, these will help me both during this crisis and will help me through the longer term too. And so you take those lists of projects that you've been putting off. You think about how can they help me now and how can they help me generate money long term, and then you might have the top 5 or the top 3 left. How do you decide which one to do? Now, there's 2 ways to go about this. One could be you just start with whatever you put at the top there and you just do that one. And then when that one's done, you move on to the next one. And when that one's done, you move on to the third one, right? You just work the list top to bottom. The first one, though, if you're like most people, the first one might seem the most daunting, like it has the most effort. That's part of why you've been putting it off, right? So look at the top 5. And pick which one seems the easiest and the fastest to pull off. The thing that would take you maybe an afternoon or a week, or if everything else is going to take you a month, right? And then do that thing, make it happen. And when that one's done, look for the next easiest or the next quickest and go do that one. For us, what that ended up being back during that polar vortex was that we had always said we wanted to have a better catering system. Sorry. We had a little catering menu that we had out there. And every once in a while, we'd have somebody like order a box of Joe or a dozen muffins or something like that. But we never really did a lot of catering. And we decided we're going to figure this out. We're going to, that was the project that we chose. We said, we're going to improve our catering menu. We're going to add some new things to it. We're going to make it look better too, so that it's more appealing. Like when people are looking at the menu, we're going to make sure it's on our website. We're going to share it on social media. And we're going to promote it. And turns out, because of the polar vortex, lots of people were still having to go to work, and but they didn't want to go out for lunch once they got to work. Or if they were having a meeting at work, nobody wanted to run out and get the lunch for everybody else. And so we were able to talk to some of our best and most loyal customers that still were stopping by because they were on their way to work, and say things like, hey, do you have any lunch meetings coming up at work? Do you need some sandwiches? Right? Do you have any breakfast meetings coming up at work? Do you need some coffee and bagels or whatnot? And because was that need, we actually got a lot of good catering orders during that time. So that helped us get through those couple months. And catering became a significant source of revenue for the years to come until we sold the business. Now, of course, during COVID-19, catering probably wouldn't be the solution for us unless we were catering to, health professionals or, some other kind of essential worker. But there could have been something else on our project list that was like, ding, 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 ding. This is how we can provide some extra value that's needed right now and help our bottom line at the same time. And it's just that kind of vision that you need to get through this time, where you take the puzzle pieces, you put it together in a way that you wouldn't have thought of before. But because you're in this crisis, you think of it. And the only reason you think of it is because you're committed to your business being around for the long term and to figure out how to get through this in a way that helps you now and helps you in the future. I hear about these businesses that were doing one thing and then they switched to making personal protective equipment. And I think that's amazing, right? They were making outdoor furniture and now they're making face masks or surgery gowns or whatever. I think that's super, super awesome. I wonder if when this crisis is over, if they're going to continue making the personal protective gear that they're making, or if the PPE, personal protective equipment, or if they'd switch back to lawn stuff, or maybe they're going to do both now and they've got a diverse, product offering. Any of that could be true. Think about your business. Maybe, you're not making a gadget that could easily, you can shift your manufacturing to making something that's really needed right now. But I bet there's some kind of value you could lend. I've been hearing all kinds of stories about like the bookstore who's now doing their story time online, right? On Instagram Live or, something like that to bring the story time to the kids at home, or like, people that do art classes, usually like after school, that are now making it part of the school day to give parents some things to do with their kids. And it's not like they're being, what's the word that I'm looking for? Opportunistic. Is that they're providing real value that real people want to pay real money for and are so thankful to have right now. So I want you to think, like, if you're committed to the long term, and you want to be here long term, how can you provide value right now and get out there and sell? There's no reason not to sell if you're able to do something. You're able to work. You're not going to put anybody's life in danger by working. That's totally great. Go do it. And if you're in a business that's currently shut down, you got to think about like, what's the thing you could do, right? Like the chef who can't cook for people right now, but could teach online classes about how to cook at home. A baker I've seen do that too. Like there's so many people being so creative. And if you already have an audience, you can go back to that audience and say, hey, I get it. We're all doing this. If this would be of value to you, here's what I got. Buy if it's a value. If it's not a value, no hard feelings, right? Like you don't have to be like a snake oil salesman or anything about it. If it's really going to help people, put your message out there and it'll help them. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. It's a Saturday. I'm talking really fast. My apologies. We work all day on Saturdays helping people. We've always worked on Saturdays in this business because most people were working their 9 to 5, and then Saturdays was the time they could think about their personal finances. So I've been talking a lot today, and it's been great. I love talking, but I'm a little talked out for a Saturday night. So thanks for your patience with me as I talked really fast and probably rambled a little bit. I hope the story that I shared with you really helps you see, like, yes, business is hard. Sometimes it gets harder than other times, but if you have that commitment to be around and you say to yourself, I'm going to make a business that lasts 3 generations or lasts as long as I want it to, and it's still benefiting me, then make it happen. Do it. And if you want someone to bounce ideas off of, say, I've got these 10 projects. I can't decide which one should be my top one. would love to chat with you about that. I love geeking out about that kind of thing and asking you questions, helping you narrow it down. Because I know sometimes there's just too many options and it's too hard to choose. So reach out, let me know if that's something that would be helpful. Okay, I know that Brandon will get mad at me if before I get off, I don't remind you to subscribe to the channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Hit the after you hit subscribe, there's a little bell that comes up. Hit that bell so you'll get notifications when we go live. We got a few more days left in business week, and then I've got some really cool things for after then that'll apply to both business owners and non-business owners. So look forward to that. Also, if you missed it in the description, there's a really cool download that we just released this week. That's Grandma's Top Tips for Entrepreneurs and Freelancers. And it's available at grandmaswealthwisdom.com/free. You can get that, and it's got Grandma's top 5 tips for us, for us entrepreneurs and business owners. It's a great way to get some inspiration, get some, real grandma perspective on what to do with your money during a crisis or not during a crisis. They're kind of those time-tested principles that have lasted for generations. So make sure you get that. A little tip, there's 5 tips. That's a pun intended, not really, but I want to intend that pun. There's 5 tips in the top tips, but then also there's 5 more tips in the email sequence that follows up with that. So be sure after you get the tips that you check your email, add us to your email whitelist or like primary inbox or whatever it is, so that you make sure that you get those. Because number 10 is actually my favorite. / number 4 is my favorite too, or 5. I forget what the numbers are, but you decide which one's your favorite. That's what's most important. Okay. I'm going to stop talking today. I'll see you tomorrow. I should tell you what the topic is tomorrow and let myself know this too. Oh, so I mentioned this whole idea of creating value for people right now. And I mentioned some ideas of how to do that. Tomorrow, we're going to get really deep about how to create value right now without coming across like you're selling. And I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation. I've got 24 hours to figure it out. I'll talk to you then. Keep building your business and your life toward a smart, stable financial future. I'll catch you next time. Peace.